Assalamu alaikum, inshallah you're well guys. So last week the ACA advanced level results came out and I wanted to start off the video by saying a huge well done to everyone who got their results. A lot of you will have passed your exams. Inshallah, you're now exam qualified accountants. I bet you're feeling a sense of relief that you don't have to do another exam for a while at least, and it's a fantastic achievement. And for some of you, you may not have done as well as expected. You may not have passed those exams, but don't worry. Dust yourselves down, pick yourselves up, and inshallah smash it out at the next sitting. And for some of you, you may also feel like quitting at this stage. You may feel like you've had enough. My honest, sincere advice to you is please do not do that. Don't quit. You're on a great path. And I wanted to speak today about my own experience of quitting, where I was this close, I'd say, this close to leaving the ACA. It wasn't at the advanced stage, but a bit earlier when I was at the professional stage. Inshallah, you guys can use this as a bit of motivation to keep going. So when I was studying for the ACA, I was actually exempt from the first 5 exams of the certificate stage, because I had spent 2 years studying for the AAT qualification. And I only had to sit the law paper, which alhamdulillah I passed. And at this stage, I'd been studying for exams, 1 exam at a time. So I'd go to college, learn the content, sit the exam, and then move on to the next module. Now, obviously at that point, guys, doing 1 exam at a time isn't going to be the most stressful thing. But then came the professional stage where we were now in line with the grads and we were now doing exams in tranches of 3. And my first tranche of exams was financial accounting and reporting, tax compliance, and audit and assurance. So with those exams, I had a clear revision plan in place. The content was going into my head. I was doing a lot of question practice. And alhamdulillah, my efforts showed in the results where I did manage to achieve good pass marks in those exams. So once I'd received the results for these 3 exams, a few months later, I was back in college for my next 3. And that was business planning, taxation, business strategy, and financial management. And this is where I really struggled. And there were a few reasons why I was struggling. So firstly, revision wasn't going well. I couldn't get into a routine. Maybe because I'd had such a long gap between studying for these exams, I got a bit complacent, lazy, and I couldn't get that routine going. Secondly, I couldn't relate to the subjects because with the first 3 exams, especially financial accounting and reporting and audit and assurance, they were directly relevant to my role. I was working in an audit role, reviewing financial statements. So I needed to understand IFRS, UK GAAP as an example. But with business planning taxation as an example, I don't really deal with tax in my day job. I don't deal with financial management. I don't deal with business strategy. So that compounded my problems. The third issue was that I didn't have anyone to talk to. A lot of my friends weren't following the path that I was doing. And for my peers, my colleagues who were sitting their exams, I didn't want to hassle them. They've got their own problems revising for their own exams. So I didn't want to be seen as a burden. So I had no one to talk to speak to about my problems whilst I was struggling. And looking back at it, I think this whole issue was made worse by the fact that I had to attend college for 6 weeks. So that was 3 weeks for the initial studying period where you're learning the content, and then another 3 weeks for the revision period where you're essentially going through as much question practice as possible. Now imagine for 6 weeks, you're sat in a room, you're not doing too well, you're struggling, you have no one to speak to. Of course, that's going to add to your problems. Ultimately, I wanted to quit. And that thought came to me about a week or so before I was due to sit these exams. I thought to myself, I'm young, I'm 22, I can leave, this isn't for me. I can then go to university. And often what happens is your mind will start making excuses. So you could take the easy option out. So I was thinking, yeah, busy season is coming up. What I'll do is I'll leave, I'll take a break over busy season, and then I can start university in September. And like I mentioned, I didn't really have anyone to speak to about the problems that I was going through. In my immediate family, I was the first person to take on a professional role, so I couldn't speak to anyone there. And even with my friends, most of them had gone to university. So at this point, they'd just finished university, so didn't really have much of an understanding of what I was going through. But I ended up confiding in my friends anyway, and they essentially gave me a good talking to. Some explicit language was used, which I'm not going to repeat today. But essentially the main message was you can't just quit because things appear unbearable, right? Otherwise you're going to do that later on in life as well. And they also explained to me, look, Fez, you're so close to passing. You've only got 6 exams in total left. And at this point, with the AAT, I'd sat 14 exams in total. So I'd done a lot of the hard slog already. Now, when I was discussing this with my friend, he actually suggested a middle ground. He said, Fez, why don't you take 1 or 2 exams? Why do you have to take all 3 at the same time? And honestly, this was like a light bulb moment for me. It was something so simple, but I hadn't even thought about. And the reason why was because I was so fixated on quitting, looking for the easy option out. I never actually stopped and thought, what is the solution to my problems? So I tried my absolute best in that week or 10 days that were left till I had to sit my exams. And I ended up doing only 2 of my exams. So I sat the business planning, taxation, and the business strategy module. I left financial management because I knew none of that was going in my head at the time. And alhamdulillah, when results came, I ended up passing the exams. I got 55 on the dot for business planning taxation, which everyone will tell you is the best pass mark you could get. And alhamdulillah, I did slightly better in business strategy. One of the reasons I just about passed business planning taxation is because I ended up cramming my revision together. And by the end of it, I didn't have enough time to actually look at my file because it's an open book exam. You're allowed to take resources in with you, but I hadn't had a chance to go through my file and understand where everything was written down. So one tip for you guys, if you're sitting the BPT exam, make sure you guys, once you prepared your file, go through it as many times as possible so you can remember where you've stored key bits of information. And I remember once I'd got my results, because the results are around 6 weeks after the date you sit your exams, I wasn't even thinking about quitting at that stage. I'd got over it. I'd sat those exams. I'd done the hardest bit. And the thought of quitting was just an afterthought. It wasn't something that I was focusing on at that point. Now, when I look back and sometimes reflect this decision, think about those times, I honestly laugh at myself. Obviously, I know it may be a bit tough for you guys right now when you've just received your results, but remember, I have the benefit of hindsight. Alhamdulillah, I've now completed the ACA. I know what wonders it has done for my career, the doors it's opened up for me. I know that if I was to get fired tomorrow, I have the ACA to fall back into, so I could essentially, inshallah, walk into another job. So what are the key learnings that you should be taking away? So firstly, it's absolutely fine to get upset, to worry, to not feel so great about the situation. Unfortunately, I think in today's society, there's a lot of pressure on people to keep a straight face, especially on men, that they can't let this problem get to them. But my point to you is, do we not celebrate when we receive good news or good things happen to us? So equally, when we receive bad news or we fail an exam, absolutely fine to take some time out for yourself. Secondly, never ever rush in making a decision. At the time when I was thinking of quitting, I was facing a lot of pressure. I would say that I was quite emotional. Things weren't going well for me. If I had just decided like that to quit, it would have been probably one of the worst decisions I've made in my life. So never make a decision when you're emotional, and never ever rush to make a decision. Thirdly, make sure you're speaking to people. I found that in numerous instances in my life when things aren't going well, it's always good to speak to someone, to lighten the load on your chest. And even if they're not an expert, they're not particularly facing the same situation as you, they may not have the same experience as you, it's absolutely fine to speak to that person, because when you're emotional, when you're thinking of quitting, when you think you can't go any further, your decision making is often impaired. So they may come up to you with a solution which you've never ever thought of before. Fourth point is, and this may come across as a bit controversial, is that these exams are not difficult at all. We think that they're hard, but they're not hard. I'd say actually your A-levels were probably harder than this. The reason why we think they're hard is because there's so much content to absorb in a short amount of time. That's it. Let's look at me as an example. I went from quitting or having it in my head that I'm about to quit to passing those exams in 10 days. I managed to buckle down, go through the content, pick up as many points as possible, and alhamdulillah pass those exams within the space of 10 days. So that should tell you that the exams aren't hard. It's just a lot of stuff to take in over a short space of time. Final learning is, don't lose sight of the end goal. Remember, when you complete the ACA or another chartered accounting qualification, doors and opportunities will open up for you. Your career, inshallah, should be set. And nothing comes easy in life. So put the hard work in now and enjoy success later. You got this. And as always, guys, I'm going to leave it there. But if you have any questions or queries, please feel free to comment below or message me on Instagram.